And we are officially recording. So for the new ones here, I do see some new names on our attendees list over here. Let me walk through a couple of slides so you kind of understand what we're all about. And by the way, I do apologize for the thinking cap. I noticed about 2 minutes before this webinar that from my workout, my hair is standing straight up. So we're gonna do things this way tonight, if y'all don't mind. So anyway, welcome to Next Gen Real Capital Multifamily Underwriting University Zoom edition. And I love your feedback after this, by the way. I know people have really enjoyed the videos we've done with the solutions and such. If it makes sense and we want to continue doing this, I think we could find a way to meet in person as well as record these. You know, maybe just record it and share it, or broadcast like we're doing now. So anyway, let me know what you think afterwards, and we'll talk about that if we can meet in person hopefully next month. We're not meeting at Toro Title this month, but I do want to continue to give a shout out to them because they typically let us use their office over in the East Nashville area. So feel free to reach out to Toro Title for all your title closing needs. They've got a great attorney on staff, and property recycling is Mike Brady's other lending company that can do pretty much everything from hard money to long-term financing at this point. So feel free to take a snap of that, or this will be available in the folder later on. And I usually gloss over this one, but there's looks like 7 or 8 new people here. So just a brief overview on my company. I'm the youngest generation of this 3-generation team right here. Next Gen Real Capital is our multifamily division. We also have a single family division down in Texas. And we are mainly focused, as you can tell from the nature of this meetup, on multifamily value add properties. We're involved in several deals at this point, and if you are a player and would like to figure out how to partner or work with us, feel free to go to our website at nextgenrealcapital.com/partner to learn more. Love to have a conversation with you and see how we can help each other. This is a team sport, by the way. So let's blow on beyond that. And I do want to take a break from here and show you guys some changes we've made to the material and how you access it. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this. The first way to get there, obviously, is through the Meetup website. If you scroll down to, let me actually go to the group homepage. If you scroll down to what we're about, you see this little tag, click here to read more. Or click read more to see Google Drive, YouTube links, and more. So before I was uploading videos to Google Drive, if you click this link, it's going to take you to our Google Drive shared folder, in which case you can find the year and month of the meeting. Notice our April no meeting, as well as the appropriate material and eventually the solutions for each one inside of it. What I'm also doing, and eventually we may transition to this entirely, but we're starting to host these solutions on our YouTube channel as well. So if you were to click on this YouTube playlist, you can go back and see every video I've ever recorded for this meetup, as well as others. But basically going back through the quick underwriting template, part 1 and 2, the rent roll only underwriting. I'll talk about this underwriting template 12-3 here in a moment. There's actually a video here for how to use that template and kind of the changes that were made. I hope you guys really enjoy it, but I think it's going to be a good tool for you guys. And then, of course, I think in March was our acquisition underwriting part 1 and 2. And these will be the solutions for this month. It looks like they're already out because we're late hosting the meetup. So the solutions will be scheduled to be released on YouTube and on our folder usually 2 weeks after the meetup. So anyway, if you haven't caught the last meetups, no worries. You can go back and watch all these as many times as you like. And if all that's too much to remember as well, you can always just go to our website. All you have to remember is nextgenrealcapital.com. You can go down here to connect partners and meetup groups. Or if you want to just do nextgenrealcapital.com/meetups, that can be easy as well. The other meetup I run, which is Multifamily Investor Nation, its meetup page and Google Drive are here. And now if you go down to Multifamily Underwriting University, you'll see a link to the meetup page, the Google Drive, and now the YouTube channel. So I hope this makes it easier for everyone to access the content. It's in enough places where I think we can all find it. So any questions on that real quick? Let me look for some hands at all. Okay, looks pretty clear. So we'll drop this out of the way for a moment. And just want to touch on the topics once again that are coming up. Really excited for what this is developing into. You know, the first 3 months of the year before April hit, you know, we kind of started going over the bird's eye view of what is underwriting. You know, what are the basic equations you need to kind of understand in your head. You know, how do you do a quick underwriting, just to, you know, in 5 minutes or less figure out, do I even want to go further with this thing, right? And then we've been in pretty deep through the acquisition underwriting of, like, you know, what is the property doing today? But more importantly than that is what we're going to start talking about today, and we're really going to be getting in the weeds going forward, because putting together a pro forma, you know, knowing what a property is doing in place is great, but knowing how aggressively you can bid on that property and how aggressively you can go after it, depending on where we are in the market cycle, things like that, it's all dependent on this pro forma and what you think you can do with the property as you take it into ownership and go through the next several years. So we're going to talk through kind of how to put one together tonight, not so much what's behind the numbers, but how to put one together. And then in June, I'm hoping to dive deeper into income forecasting, which, if I'm being honest, expenses are easy, guys. I mean, we can look at a lot of history on that, but forecasting income is one thing you cannot get wrong, because you really have to know. You can fix expenses, you can spend less money, but you have to, look at that, my light came on behind me automatically. That's great. But you have to be able to forecast income well, and also forecast the rate of realization of that income, right? You can't just assume that you have 100% realization of your rent bumps in the first 12 months. It doesn't work that way, right? You have a transition period. So that'll be a really exciting one for us to get into. And then we'll also dive into, you know, the CapEx versus OpEx forecasting, expenses, that is. And then, of course, the debt versus capital stack, and we'll backfill topics as we go on from there. So while we have that, any topics you guys would like to see, or something, you know, since we've been going through things in the past, is there anything other than that in the next few months that you'd like to dive deeper into? Feel free to raise your hand and talk about it now, or hit it in the chat box, or we can, you know, feel free to send an email later. But okay, looks like we're good there. So from that, let's see, I think I have one other thing to show you guys. I can get out of my PowerPoint here. Hope y'all enjoy my guitar back here. Let's see, what did I miss here? How to get to material, YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead and introduce the new template real quick. And like I said, I did do a video on this. Going back to YouTube, it's this one right here, the underwriting template 12-3 overview. There's about a 20-minute overview on what I'm about to say as well, if you need to watch this in the future. But if you know me at all, you know I'm a little frustrated with, you know, how the industry underwrites properties today, because I don't think it's sufficient. And I do think there's a lot of deal sponsors out there who are not paying close enough attention to the transition years, and it gets them in trouble in a lot of ways. So you know, we at Next Gen Real Capital are really working on building out our own robust set of templates. This is not one of them. This is something that I've taken from, you know, these two sheets were actually something that I learned how to underwrite with. So they're kind of boiled down and simpler rather. It's still kind of complex. But I did rebuild an entire pro forma template for you that does a lot of the work you had to do manually before. And I've tried to limit this to everything you need, but not the stuff you don't, if that makes sense. So that, you know, everyone who's on this call, let me find I lost my chat window. Hang on. Everyone who's on this call has an interest in learning how to do this and do it right. And to do that, you need a good calculator, but you also don't need so many bells and whistles that you don't know what you're, you know, you get lost, right? So let's see. Okay, so the key points about this thing are really that, we've been through the acquisition underwriting here where we're basically saying, okay, let's put together, this was March's underwriting. Let's put together, what is my mortgage info? What's my closing costs that I need to bring to the table to get the deal done? Let's go through and compare the seller's financials in pink to what we think they really should be in yellow. And, usually you're trying to make sure that, by comparing to your rules of thumb, that the seller is not hiding something, but there's the expenses aren't going to be worse than they seem to be on paper, right? It helps you kind of figure that out ahead of time. So that's in place, and then we switch over to this takeover tab, which we're going to fill this out tonight, and I'm going to show you kind of how this works. But the limitation before was there was nothing that connected to the future years. So now you have this pro forma over here that once you decide what you look at what the property is doing when you take it over. I mean, these are basically the same. These are the same numbers that come from this column. They're just brought over here to your takeover year. You're going to fill out, well, what do I think I'm going to do in the first year? And then from there, this is going to help you build out your over the next several years what you're going to do. So for example, let's just build a 7-year pro forma in. So if I go to hold period and type in 7 right here, all of a sudden you see all these cells light up and you magically have a 7-year pro forma built out. You can do this for any number of hold periods up to 10 years. And it actually pulls all the data that's not in yellow is stuff that is pulled from before and you don't have to do. So what makes this a lot easier is you're going to be able to simply put in the gross scheduled rents, the vacancy loss, the concessions, any other income you have. And I'll show you why I leave taxes this way in a moment. And Tennessee is a prime example of it. And everything else is done for you from the work you've already done on the other template. So I hope this is helpful to everyone. And without further ado, let's get into it, the actual lesson tonight. So if you remember back to March, I'm sorry, before I do that, were there any questions or any comments thus far? We've really got a quiet group tonight. I think I'm gonna have to switch this back to a Zoom meeting so I can see all your faces and you can comment and stuff like that. So we'll do that next time if we're not in person again. So okay, so remembering back to March, we were looking at Poplar Village, which was this 101 unit building that I actually tried to buy and lost in the bidding war on. But we had gone through and looked at what we decided the seller's income and expenses were by looking at the rent roll and the T12. And we had gone through and made some tweaks to it. There wasn't really a rhyme or reason behind it. I think we were just showing you what things could differ, like by maybe deferring to rules of thumbs in this column or something. But now let's go, we've already set up our loan and all that, but let's go take a look at the takeover tab and start building out our pro forma. All right, so let's say we've looked at this property, we've underwritten everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I do need to pause. Sorry to be so scatterbrained tonight, everybody. One of the major other features that I did on this tab for you was we had a problem of how to model the different loan types before in the previous template. You can now make a switch on whether or not the loan is an assumption loan or a brand new loan that you're putting in place, as well as model the interest only for you. And this is going to port over to the pro forma sheet for you. You don't have to do any thinking about it. But it's important to understand the equations though, so please do that. Okay, so back to the actual lesson for tonight. So let's say we've actually underwritten this thing and we decide that we're okay buying this thing at a cap rate of 6.6. We decided the cash on cash return at acquisition is 10%. I'd take that. Remember, cap rate is less important. It's more about the return. So as long as this isn't a severely overpayment worth of cap rate compared to the market around you, you could be okay. And in Murfreesboro, it's not. We've already looked at our equity split, which we set on the previous tab of 30% to to our group and 70% to the investors. So it looks like that would give the investors a 7% cash on cash return in year one. Well, now we've got to figure out, what am I going to do in the first year of ownership? And this is a great view because it really helps you say, okay, the acquisition is what I'm taking over, right? This is what I have. Now, just as soon as I take over, what can I do? What are the things I'm going to start doing, right? And if you don't mind, I'm going to start with expenses because I think they're a little easier to understand, and then we'll get into income because that's going to be where we probably spend a little more time talking. And by the way, everything in white is just pulled over from your acquisition tab for your reference. So you can still see, okay, here's the loan that I have set up. Here's my closing costs, all that jazz, right? So let's say that this is a Tennessee property. And what have I told you about taxes, right? Every single property you look at, you better understand what's going to happen when the state realizes you bought that property. Prime example is this property. I actually remember it very well. Hadn't traded hands in like 15 years or something like that. So there's been, Tennessee appraises on a 4-year cycle typically, their taxes, they reassess taxes. Right now we're on a 5-year cycle for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but the next reassessment is coming in the year 2022. So if you're not careful, Mr. Sneaky Broker may say, hey, taxes aren't going to go up for the next 2 years. And he's right. But then they're going to go up massively when they do, so you got to be smarter than that. Well, because year one, if we're saying year zero effectively is 2020, year one is going to be, the second half of 2020, first half of 2021. Well, taxes aren't going to go up. So for now, put a pin in this, but for now, we're just going to set that equal to what we currently have, okay? We'll address that again on the Proforma tab. Insurance, $256 a door. You see our little rule of thumb right here. It's highlighted as yellows. It's $6 above the rule of thumb. I'd say that's pretty much $250 a door. That's a pretty good rate. And I happen to know that the group that owned this owned a lot of properties, and they had a blanket policy and had a lot of good rates. I also unfortunately know that insurance on multifamily in the Southeast, because of all the claims that have been had over the last, 7 years, has been slowly rising. And we're probably going to see something closer to $275 or $300 a door unless you have a bunch of properties. So just to be safe, because I haven't quoted this property yet, I might decide to say, look, I've been seeing quotes in the $275 per door range for the policies that I put on. And by the way, I put a little extra insurance on my buildings for things like ordinance insurance. That's a story we'll have to talk about later. But when you're, let's say you're renovating an old building. This building was built in like 1960 something, if I remember correctly. As soon as I start touching something, Metro might make me bring the rest of it up to code. If let's say I have a fire in a unit and I have to redo some walls. Well, as soon as that drywall comes off or whatever it is, plaster, and they realize, well, gee, you got some knob and tube in there, you got some aluminum wiring or something like that. Well, guess what, buddy? It's your problem now, and you're going to have to bring it up to code. Ordinance insurance will protect from that, right? If you find something like that, it's part of your insurance policy, and it will cover a very hefty amount of that. Because you discover an electrical problem, that could be 50 or 100 grand really quickly, and you want to tell me that won't mess up your pro forma. Anyway, I digress. I do that a lot. I apologize. But 275 for insurance times number of units, that would put us at about 27. So look, we just actually raised our expenses in year one by about $1,000, give or take. And I apologize for the noise in the background. My little girl is taking a bath just behind this wall right here, so should quiet down soon. But anyway, repairs and maintenance, right? So 364, that could be a little low. My general rule of thumb is about $300 to $600 per unit per year. But let's say I don't know any better. Let's say I think that, and I know I'm going to go in and spend some money on the building, because remember, in our previous session, we had put about $250,000 in here for deferred maintenance and CapEx. So we know we're going to go fix some stuff anyway. And the way we're modeling this, just to remember, is, okay, well, instead of trying to cannibalize the property and take money out of the profits and reinvest them and all that, that kind of makes it hard to project anything for your investors, right? So what we would do is we would say, okay, let's take all that CapEx money that we need, and let's just assume that we put it in our equity raise and we have that money sitting in a bucket right here. Number one reason properties run, struggle is they run out of money to do what needs to be done. Well, if that bucket's here, you can just be running your property on your normal net operating income and whatever normal repairs and maintenance are. But as big things come, you just start bleeding that bucket down, and you bleed it down to it's about at your level of operating cushion, and you keep going. We'll definitely talk about that more when we come to the CapEx stuff in the next couple of months. July, it looks like. So anyway, let's say that repairs and maintenance is, I'm going to bump that to 400 a door just because I feel better about that number off the cusp. And remember, all of this, these are projections. Like initially you're projecting, and then you're going to refine as you go through due diligence. So you may have guesses when you go under contract, educated guesses. And then as you go under contract and you go through due diligence, you're going to be like getting quotes and taking property management companies out with you, and getting the experts to really help you put pen to paper. That's what due diligence is all about. So don't be scared to put a pro forma together on that basis. But I also think that 250 a door is a little bit high. I mean, when this rule of thumb was written, general administration was a little more like fax machines and copy machines and things like that. I run properties more in this range right now, so we'll call that. Property management at 8%. We're going to go change that because that is not right. I think I forgot to change that from before. For a property of this size, it should be no more than 5%. Probably more like 3.5 to 4, but we'll go with 5 for right now. And notice these are calculating as 0 right now, property management and asset management, because they're calculated as a percent of gross scheduled income, and we have not yet put in income up here, right? So it's calculating as 0. It looks like it is calculating here because we have income here. Asset management, we haven't really talked about that much in the past, but depending on the way the deal goes together, it is usually appropriate, not really in a joint venture situation, but in a syndication, when your group is the only one doing work on the property, day to day, it is appropriate to put a 1 or 2% of gross scheduled income asset management fee, just like the property management fee, and that covers all the, all the project management, especially if it's a heavy lift, all the project management, strategic sessions, things like that you're doing when you're driving the property management company to execute on your strategy. So let's just, for fun, so you see that one light up, we're going to put 2% in there for that. And that'll drag that over here. Marketing does not need to be $150 or $150 a unit anymore. We have the internet and a lot of marketing syndication tools through, RealPage and things like that. Utilities, I don't like to change utilities unless I know for a fact that I can do that. Like they kind of are what they are. So, usually you're going to want to take your last 12 months of utility spend, annualize what you have, and take the highest of the two. But this is something you get hard data on during due diligence, and you verify what it's going to be. Now, maybe you can go in here and fix some leaks or something like that. Maybe you have toilet flappers that are bad in 101 units. That'll run your bill up pretty quickly. So, just for fun, let's say we're already in due diligence, and let's say that we discovered out of 101 units, 81 of them have a bad toilet flapper and run 24/7. So let's just say we quantified that we're going to be able to reduce that by $10,000. Okay, good for us. And that's something you can do like that. You can go in there on day 1, 2, and 3 and replace 81 toilet flappers. It'll cost you a few $100s, and you'll save $10,000. That's a pretty good return on investment, if you ask me. Contracted services, just to get through this, I'm going to make that equal to what it is. And payroll, that's a little high on payroll, but about $1,000 a unit. Let's say I talk to my property management company, and they're going to run this thing for 5%, and the payroll for the leasing manager, and see if our property this size will probably have a maintenance guy on full salary and a leasing manager on full salary. So call it about $1,000 total per unit per year. That means it'll probably be something like $60,000 for the leasing manager and $40,000 for the maintenance guy. One in and one inside and one outside is what that's commonly called. So now, we've got our expenses together, and well, look, lo and behold, we think in the first year we can dramatically reduce the expenses, um, just based on the things we said here. And let's say we've got proof behind that. That's great. So before we get into the income side of things, are there any questions or anything that wasn't clear in what I just zipped through? It's a little weird doing this on webinar because usually I can look across the room and read all your faces and I can see who's like thinking about something. But again, I think we'll try this on a typical Zoom meeting next time, so we can have video for everybody. Okay. Don't be afraid to speak up, by the way. There's only about 435 people on the call. No, I'm just kidding. It's like 25. Don't worry, just like normal. Okay, so we've done all of this. And now what we're going to do is take a look at the income. Now, this is where we have to start paying attention to what we're doing. Because I don't remember what the number is, I'm going to quickly do some math on my phone so that if we start with gross scheduled rents at 100%, 1014,122 divided by 101 units divided by 12 months. Okay, so these are renting at roughly $837 per unit if you just average it all out. Let's say, I'm just going to write this up here in the notes, that after renovations or updates, market rent is at, we're just going to say 1,050. Okay, so we've got about a little over a $200 rent bump if we go spend some money and do what needs to be done. Let's say we've already figured out what that amount of money is in our acquisition tab. We have 101 units. And I do want to throw this one out. Let's see if we get anyone brave enough to step up and answer the question. But if I have 101 units, do you think I can go in there day one and all of a sudden, basically in year one, I can realize 100% of that income? If I say I'm going to bump rents on all 101 units, can I go in on day one and assume that it's just 1,050 times 12 times 101 is my income in the first year? Anybody? Oh, let's see. You guys are in the chat box. Here we go. I got you now. Okay, you guys have been talking. Sorry about that, guys. Nope, only gradual increase. Yes, very good. Thank you. And Cal knows this because he's working with me on something right now. So, yeah. So what we got to think about now, and I'm going to show you guys a preview of something else we're building within our company that given copyright issues are okay by the people who have influenced it, I may try to share it with the group as well. But we've got to build a plan for like, okay, well, when leases expire, I can't go in day one if I have a good amount of leases that are just spread evenly across the year, and like some are going to expire in January, February, March, April, May, right? And maybe you have a curve. Maybe it's like nobody moves in the winter months, so you have like 2 or 3 expiring, and then you get to May, June, July, August, and your curve gets big on lease expirations because everyone moves in the summer, and then it tapers off in August and goes back down. Well, you have to understand that because trying to say I'm going to go and just turn all the units in year one, and renovate all of them, and by the time I start year one, that's 100% in place. Well, you may not be able to physically do that, and it's a very different. This is where a lot of underwriting philosophies fall short. It's a very big difference in whether or not all of your leases expire in January of year one versus they all expire in December. I mean, if you just go to the extreme, yeah, I mean, in year one, I think I can go bump, if I spend the money and bump rent $200, I think I can increase my income by this much. Well, if you can't start till December, you've already spent 11 months and 29 days at, at your, what do we say, 837 rental rate, right? You really have to think about this because this can get you into trouble. Now, this template is a little more manual on how we have to do this because we're building something more sophisticated for our company on how we track this kind of stuff. But if you think through it, you can still do it in any tool virtually, right? So let's say that we've decided for 101 units, we feel like our team, the first limitation is how fast can the team go? The property management team, right? Let's say we have a vertically integrated company like a Freeman and Webb or someone like that who can do construction and they manage properties. Those are my favorite, by the way, because they understand what a down unit is costing you and them, right? So they're not going to drag their feet on getting things done. But let's say you have one of those, and let's say during due diligence, we mapped out the amount of work done, and we've looked at the lease expire dates, and we've decided we can do this. Call it 33 units per year. Okay, basically it's going to take us 3 years to get through the renovation. Okay, that's the first part. Well, now I've got to think about, once I do those 30 units, how much effective rent bump am I actually going to see in that year? And one way to do that may be, on average, I may have, on average, let's say I am able to turn all the units by effectively March or July. So I get half of the year at the 1,050 and half of the year at the 837. You got to think about what that revenue line might actually be. So to do it simply, let's see if I can just make a note up here, and I'll leave this with this example. And by the way, for those of y'all who are watching, these are all in our folder, and they're going the example we do tonight will be under example. The homework problems are all these 5 properties, which we'll go over later. You can do this as many times as you want, and then the solution is the one property that I've done for you on a video that's already pre-recorded. So, okay, so let's say that we're going to do 33 units per year, roughly. I know that doesn't exactly add up, but it's close enough. And let's say rent bump is going to be 1050 minus 837. Who can do that math faster than I can? Let me look at the chat box while I'm getting my calculator. Let's see, minus 837, 660, 213. There we go. Okay. So if we have a $213 effective rent bump, we have to basically say that I'm going to go with let's just assume for simplicity's sake that the second 6 months of the year is going to all have the units, those 33 units at the full rent bump, and the first 6 months is going to have those units at the old rent. Okay. So basically that means that our year 2 rent is going to be, we already said that it's going to be, and I like to do math in cells here, guys, so I apologize for that, but I'm going to try to type it out so you see what I'm doing. So if we take 101 minus 33, right, that's going to be our 68 units that aren't turned. Let's say that those stay for the entire 12 months at 837 times 12. Okay, so that's 68 units that are left over times 837 times 12. So that's the percentage of our income that's basically staying flat because we're not turning the units. Now you may be still bumping those units, 2 or 3%, even though you're not turning them, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to include that here yet. Okay. So basically there is 33 that are left over plus 33 times, okay, so now we're going to do 33 times the 837, which is our first 6 months of the year, times the first 6 months of the year, plus 33 times 1050 times 6, which is our second 6 months of the year. Okay, so when you do that, that should give you about a $40,000 increase in rents. Okay, So you've done a value play, but look at the drastic difference. I just want to show you how far off you can be. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. If I were to just go say, oh, guess what? I can go do 1,050 times 101 units times 12. I could be, if we said the other one brought us up about $50,000, and I assume in year one that I can raise the income by $200,000, kind of a problem, right? So you can see how you can get yourself in some major trouble here if you don't pay attention to this stuff. Okay, so concessions and non-payment. This is going to be, you ever seen those buildings where you have to go by and like flat screen TV to move in, or $300 off first month's rent? That's your concession, and your non-payment is what part of what we call your economic vacancy. Those are people who are in a unit but not paying you. They're the people you're probably going to evict at some point. Typically, you're going to have some of that no matter how well run you are. So let's just say 1 to 2%. I'm going to say at takeover, it's going to be about 2% times your gross scheduled income. Okay, it looks like they were running at about 1%. We'll just say we're going to have some more turnover as we're doing this, so that knocks down our benefit a little bit. Utility reimbursement, I don't know. Looks like they did have some of that going on here. I don't remember what it was, but let's say that's the same. This is where if you wanted to start charging for water, or if the landlord is paying any of those utilities, and we can actually bill it back, that's helpful. And then other incomers can use the same thing as well. So naturally we would go deeper into that if necessary. But so at this point, we've kind of built out our year one. Like, this is kind of, okay, well, we've given this a lot of granular thought. We've gone through the expenses. We kind of know our starting point, kind of how we're going to kick this thing off. We know what the rate at which we're going to do this. I'm going to copy this and take it with me to the next tab. Now we got to go figure out what's the next several years going to look like, So now is where we come to the magic of the pro forma, and this is where we get to start understanding what do returns look like and things like that, right? Beyond just cash on cash return, but what is your total return? What happens when you sell the property? Things like that. So this part's all kind of new, I think, from our group. So, please light me up with questions as we go. I do tend to go a little too fast in this stuff. So, okay, so we've already decided initially we're going to go for a 7-year hold. That's what we think. We'll let the returns tell us what we really need to do, but we're going to start there. Exit cap rate. We looked over on acquisition. It looks like we're buying this at roughly a 6.7 or a 6.5 based on these numbers. I'm not saying that's a good deal. I'm just saying that's however we did the numbers, that's how it came out. Well, let's say, and you have to put some thought into this, because you can, and guys, if you're looking to invest in a deal and someone's showing you a pro forma, like, this is a very important nugget. Someone can really sway how good the returns look by changing this number. And I'll show you how in a few minutes. But you need to understand what cap rate they're assuming when they sell the thing. Like, it should at least be, kind of where the market is today. I would only accept someone projecting a more aggressive cap rate at sale if they can show that the market has undeniable traction leading in that direction, right? I mean, right now, everyone's been underwriting to say, well, the cap rate's probably going to be like, 100 basis points worse, or like, if you're buying at a 6, sell at a 7, to be conservative, when, in 5 to 7 years. So we've been on this expansion cycle for so long, and as we can tell, we're kind of in a little bit of a recession right now. A little bit, I think, is understatement, but now you have to think, well, is this the recession now? Are we buying these properties now, and then when we come out the other end, and sell this thing in 7 years, maybe it's reasonable to believe that we're going to be at the same cap rate we are today. You got to think through that in the market you're going through. But anyway, so just to be conservative, we said we're buying this thing at a 6.7 based on his numbers, 6.5 based on his numbers, 6.7 based on ours, so a little better deal. Because it's Murfreesboro, and truthfully, I don't see that town going too far downhill. let's just say we do it at a 7, right? We'll give it a 50 basis point bump right there. Sales commissions, unless you know better, just use 2%. Transfer tax, unless you know better, use 2%. That can also vary, but it depends, you got to know your area. Income increase, this is used for your gross potential market rent. This is so gross scheduled rent is your rent. And I think I've put these comments here to help understand what these each are. Excuse me, but gross scheduled rent is what's on your rent roll. And, as you're bumping rents and stuff, this is what is on your rent roll, your tenants are paying. Gross potential rent is what the market is doing. So here's a cool thing to watch. Let's say that in the market you're buying this in, rents typically increase 3% year over year. We'll just put in 3%, okay? You can tell that line just changed. So it's saying, well, our gross potential rent in year 1 is actually taken from this tab over here where we establish what the gross potential market rent is. And that's the market, like after you've turned the units, whatever units you're trying to compete with, after you've done your renovations, what is their average rent, per year? And that's what you put in here. And then you measure yourself against it with your gross scheduled rent. So this is just adjusting that market rent year over year, because you may be correcting your property to market, by raising rents. But guess what? Market rents hopefully probably still going up. So you may be trying to chase that for a couple of years to get those lines to cross, so that's really what you get to look at here. And that's also where this line item loss to lease comes in. Your loss to lease is the difference between your rents and the market rents. Make sense? And let me just jump back up here because I forgot to do this. The expense increase, I like to start with a 3% income increase and a 2% expense increase. It means you're kind of widening the gap by 1%. Hopefully you do better. I mean, maybe expenses don't go up 42% year over year, but it's a pretty good average, and you at least got to keep up with a low level of inflation. And so you want to make sure your income gap is widening, not decreasing. So in theory, by the way, this is another one of Chad's harebrained theories, but this is why you find out finding mom and pop owners who had a property that was performing very well years ago, and let's say they just haven't bumped rents in 15 years, and all of a sudden they can't, unless they've paid off their mortgage, they're struggling. Well, the reason is their expenses have kept going up year over year and their income stayed flat. Eventually it catches up. So, and just for your reference, your first debt and second debt, this is akin to your, back over here, your primary mortgage and your secondary mortgage. Just for reference, these cells are pulled to show you, what's your interest only period, your amortization period, and if you had a second mortgage or a supplementary mortgage on here, that'd be where you'd see these numbers as well. So, okay, so now we've got to finish what we started with, gross scheduled rents. And this is kind of our most important chart here, our most important line. This is what we had started to build out that equation. Let me go grab it again because I think I have copied something since then. So let's build out the rest of our value play. We've already done the first part in year 1. So let's copy this equation here. And now what we're going to do, let me think through this real quick. Sorry, this is what you get when I do this live. Sometimes I have to stop and think. Okay, so this is what we did for the 33 units we turned in that year. We're going to assume again that every year we turn 33 at an average of June, and we're going to basically get 6 months of old rent and 6 months of new rent in that year. Okay, so basically what I want to do is take the existing rent. Let's see if this works out. So we're going to take what we did the last year. We're going to add in 33 units of the new rent here. But we need to also take, no, we're not going to do it that way. You can't see what I'm doing as well. Okay, so we're just going to shift this a little bit. So by this time we've done 66 units. Okay, so this is how many units are done. Actually, it's not right either. Bear with me here for a second. friends. So that's what we're doing in this year. We're going to have 133 minus 60, or 101 minus 66 is what we have at the new rent. And then we're going to have plus what we did last year, the 33 units times 1050 times 12. Let's double check that. So we have, now these are the units that we haven't touched yet. These are the units that we're touching this year, and these are the units that we touched last year. There we go. Let's see if that makes sense. Yeah, we'll say it's about good. So that's, now we've done the second 33 bunch, right? Now we got to go do the remaining units. So now when we're done with this year, let's just, it's probably like 35 that's left over, but let's say that we no longer have anything at the old rent. Okay. We're going to, I guess I actually have to do this math. 101 minus 66 is 35. Okay, I was right. So in this year, we're going to turn 35 units, and we're going to have 66 that are already done. Okay. So now this is our forced depreciation period. Okay. Is that somewhat clear, by the way? I know this is a difficult thing to show without visual feedback. Okay, good. I'm getting some thumbs up. Y'all please stop me if there's something that doesn't make sense here. But so anyway, what we've done here is we've taken our first year value play and we've turned 33 units and kept the others the same. Our second year, we've turned the additional 33. And our third year, we've turned the last 35. So now we've gotten to a point at the end of year 3 where we've kind of done our, if you're looking at it, if you were to plot this out, this would be our ramp rate of income. And then it's going to level off and go more like with just whatever income increase we assume. So steep ramp during your forced depreciation period, level off and continue to gradually increase, right? So this is where I'm going to say, okay, now that I'm done, I'm not done. I'm not just going to say, well, for the rest of the time, y'all can just have that rent. No, I'm going to still increase rent on everybody every year by the amount of market increase, right? So we've said market increase is 3%. So let's just go in here and take the year before's rent times 1 plus, that's 100% plus our income increase, and function F4 to lock that cell. If y'all don't know this trick, putting dollar signs next to the number and the letter will prevent the cell from moving when I drag it across. Okay, so that's going to increase us by 3% year over year, and we'll drag that across. And now we see our income going up sharply and then going up gradually after that. Okay. And by the way, let's say I decide, well, rent bumps in Murfreesboro are actually 4%. Well, it's going to increase that for me, right? You can change it up here. But what's interesting is you have to pay attention, because if I'm assuming that rents go up by, let's see, that's interesting. So if you look at these two lines, what do you notice right here? So gross potential rent is greater than gross scheduled rent, okay? And then as soon as we start bumping rents, our loss to lease got negative, right? The problem here is I didn't pay attention to what my gross potential rent number was in the calculator. But what that would tell you is you're trying to raise rents higher than market will bear. That's a problem. I know that's actually not the case, so I'm going to go back over here and fix this number. It looks like I never did. So we'll make that 101. Let's say, by the way, that we're going to our plan when we underwrote this property is to raise rents to $1,200 to $1,050 is what we showed. But let's say market rent for competition is at $1,150. Like we're planning on achieving a certain level that's below market, right? It's even better when you can do that. It's better when you're not having to push the market and take credit for all the juice there, right? You can be a little more conservative. So let's say that gross potential rents are actually $1,150 times 12. And that should fix our problem. There we go. Now we have positive loss to lease. How about that? But what I was really wanting to show you with that is what's cool about this is you may be worried about, okay, well, what happens if I go raise rents this quickly and I catch up to market rent today? Well, you're going to do it over 3 years. Market rent has also been increasing over 3 years. So what you see here is you may never catch up, right? and you may not have to with your value play because the market may keep going without you. You may just kind of ride below market, which is a good place to be. That's what keeps you full when things like this happen, where people lose jobs and have to downgrade and things like that. They come to your apartment. Okay, so now we got to talk about vacancy, and I've made this super easy to build in because you see here it takes the vacancy percentage from our previous sheet, but it's good to assume an elevated level of vacancy because we are underwriting, or we're turning units, right? So you're going to have some people when new leadership comes in, some people just don't want to fool with it, and they don't like unrest, and they just move out. They go somewhere else. So you may have you will have some turnover from that. Average turnover every year is 50% anyways. But while you're turning units, let's say you hit a water main, or I don't know, something, you find out that plumbing is bad. Like, some units may be down longer than you want them to. So like when that lease expires, you should get it turned in a week or two and get it back on the market. But let's say a problem comes up and 4 units are down for a month and a half, or hey, how about this? How about COVID happens? And you had 5 units in your apartment building that you intentionally let go vacant so you could renovate them and put them back on the market. Guess what happened here? I've been sitting on 5 vacants for 8 weeks now. They're just now starting to lease up because no one was moving in March and April, right? I mean, it stopped. So you gotta think about that when you're doing a pro forma. Better to be conservative than too aggressive. So let's say that we're going to keep running at 10%. For the first 3 years while we're doing this. Well, then let's say that we have a stable tenant base. We've picked all the tenants, or we have good long-term tenants at this point because we've pretty much turned the units that needed to be turned. And we feel pretty strongly in Murfreesboro that the market vacancy rate is 2.5%. Maybe I think I can run at 5% conservatively, right? And feel pretty good about that. So you can build in your vacancy directly, just like that, okay? And you see that vacancy is calculated as a negative number because it's a debit to your income. Concessions, and non-payment, we talked about that before. We're starting at 2% for things we have to give away to get people to move in, and people that are squatting in our apartments and not paying. Let's say that stays up during our renovation, and then we get that down to 1%. Now, trick question. I'm going to try to get someone to jump in the chat here. If I have my concessions and non-payment and my vacancy loss shown right here, what is my economic vacancy? I see a few responses typing here. Anyone care to venture a guess? Feel free to raise your hand and speak too. I'm getting tired of hearing myself talk, by the way. Yeah, here we go. Go ahead, Cal. I think you're on mute though.
All right. Thanks, brother.
There you are.
I cannot see your screen properly, but can you point out, okay, it's a combination of your vacancy, loss percent, plus your concession.
Very good. That's exactly right, Cal. So, and that's an important thing to know, because when lenders are looking at this deal, and I know I have 2 or 3 lenders on this call right now. When lenders are looking at this deal, they care about what the economic vacancy is. It's great. You got to know what your physical vacancy is, and that tells you a lot. But you also got to know how many people are living in your apartments and not paying, or how much money you're having to give away just to get people to move in. So when you add all that together, your physical vacancy, your concessions, and your non-payment, that's your economic vacancy. And that's the effective vacancy that your profit and loss statement feels every month, right? Thanks for that, Cal. I appreciate it. Okay, so basically what we're showing here is in the first 3 years, we're running at an economic vacancy of 12%, which some lenders may not consider that stabilized, and that's another nugget, by the way. So, I mean, 85% to 90% is usually considered stabilized by your agency lenders and things like that, depending on the market cycle where you are. Lately, they've liked 90%, the pro forma that you show your investors and the pro forma that you show your lender are two different things. Okay. And I know I'm going to have a phone call from 2 or 3 ladies on this call tomorrow about what I'm about to say, but when you're showing a pro forma to an investor, you want to be conservative, because the last thing you ever want to do is overpromise and underdeliver, right? So you got to run a fine line of, here's how aggressive I can project this thing to be to make sure I can hit the returns you want to see, and not deter you to go invest with somebody else, right? Which, by the way, it's not just, people aren't going to invest in you because of the deal; they're going to invest in you because of you, right? It's the deal's got to be great as well, but if they can't believe in you, it's just numbers on a piece of paper, right? But my point is, you want to make sure you're being, conservatively aggressive with your investors, right? With your lender, you got to be truthful, and lenders are going to look at things as if they have to take it back from you. That's how they underwrite, right? So they're going to say, well, what's it, how's it going to look if this guy runs it into the ground? Can I get my money out of it if I have to take it back and sell it? But that's the margins they build in. That's what they're looking at, right? But if you have something that can realistically perform at 5% vacancy, or realistically can perform, you think you can get this utility income in place in the first 3 months, but to be conservative for your investors, you're going to show 12 months. Don't sandbag yourself with your lender. I've done this because I've showed them the same pro forma that I've shown my investors, and I mean, don't lie to your lender, because they'll figure it out, but be truthful with it. And if the truth is aggressive, show them the aggressive portfolio, because it's not, or the aggressive pro forma, because it's not going to hurt you. They're going to do their own underwriting anyways. But, my point is, just don't sandbag yourself and make the property look like it's doing a lot worse than it really is, because, that can actually hurt your proceeds and your rate and things like that. Now that I said that, I'm waiting to see hands raising or anything like that, if someone may want to contradict that, but everyone good? Okay. Okay, so utility reimbursement, other income. Let's see what I done. I think I just kind of kept it the same across the board. This is what, let's just make a change, by the way. Let's say in year 2, we basically kept the utility, I think we kept it the same, didn't we? Yeah, we kept the utility income exactly the same in year 1. Let's say that we know in year, during year 1, we're gonna implement a project, and we're gonna go switch all the lights to LEDs, all the common area lights to LEDs. When we renovate these toilets, and these apartments, we're gonna switch everything to low flow. And let's say we've quantified with a company that says, I'm gonna save you, 30% on your utility bill by implementing this project, right? Now there's tax credits and all that kind of stuff you can go for. I'm doing that right now as well. But let's just say that, we know we can save, I'm going to do this times 66%, because we're 70%, sorry, because they're going to save us 30% on our bill. Uh-oh. Percentage sign would help, wouldn't it? I just did that on utility reimbursement. I'm sorry, guys. That doesn't make sense. Scratch what I just said. Let's say that we have a, this $32,000 is actually from a electrical bill back system, right? We pay all the electric, and we bill the tenants for it. But let's say we've been paying water and we've not been billing them back. The market bears billing it back. Let's say we go implement a RUB system, we actually get everything sub-metered at the water connection to the apartment. People come by and read the meters, and we get a report that says, okay, here's what each unit used. Now I can bill you back retroactively. So let's say that by doing that, we're going to gain 30%. Sorry about that. 1.3 times, I cannot get this right, can I? 1.3, there we go. So that increase, it's a step change in our utility income, and then we realize that from there on out. So now let's talk about taxes real quick, and then I think we'll spend about 10 minutes going through returns, and then we'll see if there's any questions. So I think it looks like we're about an hour in right now. So taxes, I leave that everything down here is, this is the numbers that came from takeover, and these are simply increasing year over year by this percent. That's the 2% we talked about. So it's going to be 102% of that every year, right? Taxes, we talked about knowing that our taxes won't change till 2022, right? Well, let's say that 2020 was year 0, 2021 is year 1, 2022 is year 2, okay? This building, I don't remember the exact numbers, but just to show you the power of it, let's say it hadn't been sold in 20 years, right? By the time they get a hold of my new purchase price and they flip those taxes, my new taxes very well may be 2x what they were before. I mean, I've got a property or a set of properties right now where I know that to be the case, and we had to plan for it early. I mean, that can really, really wreck your pro forma if you have to 2x that number, because that basically means your expenses just went up 70 grand in 1 year, right? But the good news is they don't raise after that for a while. And the next one should be 4 years later. So 1, 2, 3, just call it 4 here. So we're going to make this equal to this. It's going to stay the same for that year. It's going to stay the same for that year. And then here, I'm just going to say equals this times 1.05. The reason I do that is depending where you live, you got to know where you live and how they assess taxes, but they're going to see that the property changed hands, and they're going to get me in that first one. But after that, and this is why people's taxes can stay so low for a long time. After that, you don't report your income to them, so it may only creep up over time after that, maybe 5% every 4 years or something like that. So you got to figure out how taxes are done in the area that you're buying. But that's how I would do it, and then that's going to stay the same again. So taxes are a bear, and they're very important. Like, this is the number one thing you need to understand when you're underwriting a property, because this will kill you if you get this wrong. Okay, and everything else calculates automatically. Now we can come down below here, and we're going to have basically the same numbers we had on our other templates. We're going to have our net operating income. We're going to have debit our capital reserves, which the lender is going to require us to hold. We had set these at $300 per door on the previous tab. We have our cash flow after those capital reserves. Then we pay our mortgage. And here's what's fun. With the way we've built this calculator here, where you can put in your interest only period for 3 years. If you come back to pro forma, you're going to notice that for year 1, year 2, and year 3, you have this debt service. And then boom, it flips to your principal and interest payment in year 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that is built in for you now, and it used to take a little more thought. So that's your primary mortgage. We're not using secondary mortgage, so that's going to be 0. Then you have your total cash flow before taxes, which is, effectively cash flow left over after paying mortgage and all obligations. And then you start cutting things up. So your company, you've decided, is going to get 30% of this deal. So you take that cash out for yourself for all the work that you've done, and which, believe me, it's a lot. So you earn every penny of this. And then you start to say, okay, well, here's my equity partner's cash every year. This is a reminder on how much money they brought to the table, and this is the equity partner cash on cash. So you're going to make some people pretty happy if you start off at a 9% and you increase from there to 11% within 3 years, and then you only have a little dip when you flip from interest only and keep going up. So that's a pretty decent return set there. But something you have to understand as a deal sponsor, you have to understand, like, what's the total return going to be on the deal. Like, cash on cash is important, but the magic of doing things like this, and our target, I want to hit an equity multiple of 2 as soon as I can, right? And that's basically doubling people's money. Another way to look at that is a total annualized return of 20% in 5 years. That's 20 times 5 is 100. That gives you an extra 100% on your initial money, which is doubling your money as well. So we'll look at that in a second. But anyway, to do that, you have to first come to these blue areas and say, okay, let's do our projected sale value analysis, shall we? So we know from our previous equations that net operating income and cap rate determine our sales price, right? So that's where this cap rate thing I told you about is going to make a big difference. And we're going to play with that in a second so I can show you. But projected sale value is basically going to take your net operating income from up here, and it's going to divide it by your cap rate of 7% and come up with a projected sale value. Now, what I don't remember is what we bought this at. We're saying 8 3/4. So basically, we'll be selling it at about 13.2 in 7 years. Of course, first we have to pay back our loans, right? So we got to keep track of what the loan balance is over time, and this is actually kind of a bear. So having this built in should be a big help for each of you, especially when you start dealing with interest only and things like that. You got to make sure you know how much is left in the year that you sell, right? Second loan balance is 0. We got to pay our broker's commissions. We got to pay our transfer tax, which you could negotiate depending on if it's a seller's or buyer's market. You may negotiate it to somebody else, to the buyer rather. And then you have your net gain loss from sales. So in each one of these years, this is how much money we're going to make as a group. Like, this is how much is left over to distribute in year 7. So based on these numbers in year 7, if we bought this thing at 8 3/4, we're going to have $6.5 million in proceeds to distribute at sale. That's pretty good. But what does that mean? So now we got to go figure out, well, where do those go? So in terms of total distributions today, we're going to look at that total gain loss from sale, right? Which is going to be, we just talked about that 6.654 million. But you also have to consider how much money have you paid out to date in cash flow before taxes, right? So that's it's going to add up everything that you have paid up to this year. So basically, including your sale and including your cash flow, you've paid out almost $10 million over 7 years. Okay. And by the way, the blues are coded to be what the overall deal is doing. Then we get into the equity partners in green, and then your company in pink. Okay. No rhyme or reason to the colors, just felt right at the top. So, okay. So then we're back to total projected returns. So this is a pretty solid deal here. So looking at, and by the way, it was not this good when I was trying to buy it, but it just worked out this way. So let's look at the equity multiple first. This is basically, saying that in year 6, so actually looking at this, I might reconsider a 7-year hold. I might actually say, let's market this as a 6-year hold, because I get to an equity multiple of 2 at this point and can actually double the equity partner, or double the money on the deal at this point, which I realize now we're going to have to look at that for the investors, but the overall deal shows that. So this is your annualized return after return of capital. So this basically says, if I sold it in 7 years with all the money that we've made from sale and from cash distributions, if I divide that by my hold period of 7 years, I'm going to have a 34% average return year over year. That's pretty strong. So now what we're going to do, this is the same exact calculation set down here, but now we're going to remove the money that your company is going to keep and do the calculations with the amount of money left over for the investors, right? This is basically the 70% of the 100%, right? You're keeping 30 for all the work that you're doing. So if you do the partner distribution from sale, that you see that's dropped from 6.6 to 4.6. Same thing with cash flow to date, and then less investor principal, which is important because you have to show what the amount of money you pay back. Sorry, on brain freeze for a second. And then you have the total investor gain loss to date after money in and money out. And this is where you start to look at, okay, this is more what I remember, because it was going to be a longer hold than this. But you start to see that we're at about an equity multiple of 1.4 by year 7, which is that's a mediocre it's not as strong as I'd like it to be, right? Now, I really want to be hitting this 20% by year 5 to double money quickly. But you can start to see, well, we definitely can't sell in these 2 years because we haven't made enough money back on the cap rate. But check this out. This is where I was telling you need to watch what people are putting in for cap rate. So let's say that I bought this thing at 6.5%, or a cap rate of 6.5, like we said. And let's say that I'm selling to you that the cap rate is going to be so much stronger than it is today. The market cap rate is 6.5 today. So let's say I'm buying it at 6.5. That's what market is. And let's say that I've got this great story about how Murfreesboro is going to be selling at a 3.5 cap. Even less than that. Let's just say a 5.5 cap. So one point better, one whole 100 basis points better. Watch what happens to the 19% 1.4 in column L. That literally took us from a 20% annualized return to a 32% annualized return just by changing one number, right? So if I sell it at the same cap rate that I bought it at, let's just do it this way, 23% versus 5.5, 32%, right? So my only point in saying this is if you're looking at joining a deal or if you're presenting a deal to someone else, you need to be able to talk through why you think the cap rate is what it's going to be when you sell it. And it's a forecast. It's a forward-looking statement. Nobody really knows, but you can try to read the indicators and the market data and the demographics and what's coming to the area and all that, and you can make a reasonable assumption. But just be wary of people who are always saying, yeah, the cap rate's here today. It's going to be 200 points lower than it is today in 7 years. That's kind of speculation, right? So anyway, just something to be careful of. And then this is, because this template doesn't assume that the sponsors have put money in the deal. The one that I use does, because we often do that. But if we, this is just basically saying, okay, well, the money we peeled off that was paid to the sponsoring company, this is basically how much you would make over the hold period in proceeds from sale and from cash flow. So yeah, so that's how this thing works. And it is now 8:49. I realize I did it again and talked all night, but this was a lot. And this has been recorded. It'll be posted. It's also, there's also homework solutions that have been loaded here. So sorry, the homework, the example we're going through is saved here if you want to go back through it. Okay, the homework is any of these 5 properties. I recommend you go and underwrite all of them. In each one of these are all real properties that I've gone after in the past. They each have a rent roll, a T12, and you have the offering memorandum if you want to look through it. This was a big portfolio. So you have one of each. Poplar Village is the one that we went after that we did today. Hermitage is what I usually do in the homework. So you can check the other ones if you wanted to polish your skills a little bit. And then as I mentioned, the solution videos are already posted on our folder. This is our folder here. They're also on YouTube, whichever way you prefer to look at them. It's whatever's easier. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So if anyone out there is still awake, and it's getting late at this point, any questions? Anyone want to jump in and talk anything else in further detail tonight? Let me get my window up with all the attendees here. Okay, I see a couple of chats. Good stuff, guys. Okay, well, I guess general feedback on the Zoom conference. So I think one thing I wanted to, if we still are doing this in June, which I think we will be, it may be best to actually use a Zoom meeting so we can more easily interact with each other. I think the webinar is a little more isolation here, but what do y'all think? Do you want to try to keep doing this? Zoom is good. Okay, good deal. All right, well, we will try Zoom, and hopefully in the future we can get back to meeting in person, but I think I will keep this going as we're starting to gain some out-of-town visitors, and being able to broadcast as well is a good thing. So Anyway, oh, I mentioned I would give you guys a preview of what we're working on here as well. Let me pull this over. I'm going to actually save this for you guys and X out of it. By the way, I am not using this template in my daily life. I built it for your viewing pleasure, or for your use. So I see some people saying I like all online. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think when we get back to in person, we'll try to. I'm going to try to see if I can like do it in person and just record it on my screen while we're talking in person, or maybe I can broadcast it directly. We'll see. But something like this is a little hard to do in an in-person meetup. I agree. Okay, so I don't use this template in my daily underwriting or what our team is doing. This is something I built for this class. So if you happen to find something that doesn't look quite right in this template, please let me know, because if I was using it every day, I would catch it. But this is something that I built on my own for you guys, and it's been through pretty rigorous checks. But there's always the chance that I messed up somewhere. So if you find something that doesn't look right, let me know. Pretty positive these first two tabs are in good shape. The pro forma one is perhaps there's something out of whack, but it looks good. So getting out of that, the thing we're building over here, just to kind of give you the idea of what kind of rigor we do. We do like to have kind of this should look very similar to the quick look underwriting tool you guys have gotten from me. I like to have my T12 dropped in something like this, and I go tag it, and then I have it built out into a nice T12 that's very simple for me here in things that I understand. I have a rent roll analysis that I put together to understand what they've got going on. And then, you start to get into the details of, what's the equity going to look like, for my CapEx and my closing costs and money we're bringing to the table. I like to be able to have a very detailed look at debt. I mean, there's full amortization schedules in here and things of that sort. And then we start to get into, the acquisition underwriting, like we talked about, sellers and buyers financials. We get into a much more sophisticated income forecasting situation. And then this is where I start to get into pre-due diligence pro forma, where I do just what we did over there. And then I build out there's many different return scenarios I like to look at, depending on if we're doing Class A or Class B shares, if we're doing a straight equity and preferred return, if we're doing equity split only. And there's different ways to put these deals together that I like to look at. Maybe some graphs once we get to that point. But the things that underwriting is missing today is a detailed CapEx plan that's going to kind of show when I spend money each year, what is the revenue recognized, and you can kind of see on the pro forma, or the P&L, how is money spent affecting money earned, right? That's an accounting thing that's really good to see. And you also want to be able to build a pro forma that has, your understanding post due diligence, which is going to be much more in depth, but then something that bridges it directly into a 24-month budget for your property manager. So anyway, this is some of the stuff we have going in the background. But so this does get a lot more detailed as we go. Anyway, okay, everyone. Well, looks like we're 5 minutes before the top of the hour. So I hope everyone stays safe. Enjoy what we've put together for you. If you have any questions or want to talk this nerdy stuff, I love it. So feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other in person again soon. Take care, everyone.